So we sort of sat for a while. I mean, we were like about a decade in to doing all of this work and really proud of what we had built. Um, but decided that we wanted to be able to actually influence change more, and that's where the idea of diversified thinking came from. So I mean, traditionally I think a chief experience officer, like I always joke, it's like whatever the CFO, the CEO, and the COO isn't doing. I think sometimes that's true in a lot of organizations.
Hi all, good morning. So today I have Melissa with us who is all about transforming tech with APIs, agile, and inclusion. She's all about taking an open-minded perspective when she comes to dealing with problems. Let's welcome Melissa on 10 Minutes of High Wisdom, where she will tell us about what it's like being a leader, what does Chief Experience Officer actually entail, and what we can learn from her journey. Hi Melissa, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So, Melissa, let's dive right into it. So, my first question would be: Is you're the co-founder of Diversified Thinking? Could you tell me more about the goals and initiatives of the organization, and how it promotes diversity? Because that's a big topic that's going around these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So it actually was born from my co-founder and I doing a lot of nonprofit association work, both like locally here in our state of New Hampshire, where we are in the northeast of the US, but then also with national and global organizations really focused around women in tech. That was obviously that's something that's akin to my heart. So definitely where we were focused, and we built a lot of communities, a lot of safe spaces, and it was incredible, right? We had such a great environment for to support, lift up women, to share experiences. But what we started to really struggle with was we felt like all this conversation wasn't leading to a whole lot of change. It was creating, again, like all of that community that we felt was missing and we needed. But why did we still need it? So we sort of sat for a while. I mean, we were like about a decade in to doing all of this work and really proud of what we had built. Um, but decided that we wanted to be able to actually influence change more, and that's where the idea of diversified thinking came from. We've been so focused on women, which is still a huge aspect of what we're trying to service, and just dimension that all the dimensions of diversity, and that one is again like really akin to our heart. But like, how can we raise the level of action to meet the level of conversation? And that's really where diversified thinking came from. And so through that, we really institute several different areas of programming. Some are still very focused around women, because that's what we know. But also mentoring programs, working with like local universities and other corporations, like to support bringing people of different perspectives together. And that is really the goal, is that we believe when we bring the diversity of thought into the mix, that's when actual change is going to happen. So creating like silos was actually encouraging more silos, and what we wanted to do is try to bring everybody back together, and that's sort of our story, where we came from.
That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. A follow-up question would be is usually a lot of individuals have a vision, but to change that vision into tangible actions is something that's hard. So what were some of the steps that you took that you were like, okay, this is an action I can take to cause a change into this thing. So how did you decide on certain steps that would help in making that change in the first place?
Yeah, so we really dove right in. I would say there was a lot of things, like even using a mentoring program as an example, there were a lot of things we didn't have. We knew, again, we had that vision of like we want to do a mentoring program, right, as an example. And traditional mentoring programs, there's lots of great actual technology out there right now that facilitates mentoring programs, and traditional mentoring programs will match based on like characteristics. But what we were trying to do was match people based on their differences. And what we found really quickly as we explored was nobody was doing that. Nobody was providing solutions to do that. So it really became, if you can picture in true like founder mode, me sitting cross-legged on my floor with printouts of all the people that were participating both on mentee and mentor side, and reading them and saying like, where do I see things that stand out that are really sort of distinct and different, and then putting them in a pile together. Like, okay, those two are together, those two are together. And honestly, like that sort of experience, which again is I think how you start anything, is like you dive in and you just sort of do it. And sometimes you do it even as a technologist manually. And you sort of figure out, with the goal being, let's build this program, let's match these people based on what our vision is, and then let's see what happens. It's sort of a human experiment of sorts. And I'm so excited to say, like, the first time we did it, again, people at first were very much like, I don't understand why I'm a 40-year-old white female who's been an architect and a software engineer my entire career and paired with a very tall black male mechanical engineering student. Like, I'm not sure, like, what exactly is going to happen here? Like, I don't, how can I offer him advice, vice versa? And at the end of the program, which spanned from like 4 to 6 months, depending on where we sat in the year, they were like, those people are still connected. It actually warms my heart. Like, they're connecting them with other people now. And it was like, I learned so much. The mentor was like, I learned so much in this process, about like things I never even know I would learn from him. Right. And so that's just one example, but it was really, we dove right in, we tested it like you should do with anything where you're trying to see, does this make sense, is there a need? And it worked. And then I think, referrals and people coming back are always like the testament that you did something that had an impact. And every mentor returned to the second program. There was nobody that said, and that's a lot of time
Wow.
commitment being a mentor in a program like that. And we were very strict about like, you have to have these touch points. Like, we want it to be a great experience. And I mean, it's just amazing to me that we tripled the program the second time, and the people that did it the first time was quite small. It was like 15 people, and that same 15 came back. There was nobody that when we said, "Do you want to do it again for a second session?" They were all like, "Absolutely, that was an incredible experience." I didn't know what to expect, but you guys, like, it was so different than anything I've ever been a part of. So really, it was just doing it. It's and so
Wow.
like again, like I think that's part of sort of the lost art of figuring it out, right? And that people are like, you know what? And if it doesn't work, being okay with abandoning it and not being afraid to like hold on to it because it was your dream and your creation. Because if it doesn't resonate with people, it's a nice idea, but it's not going to land, right? And it's not going to have an impact if what you're doing is like in the not-profit world, or make money if what you're doing is in the for-profit world, right? And I think those are like how you're measuring success in either of those spaces.
That's super inspiring, specifically bringing together different people where people are like, oh, I won't relate to that person. What do I do with this person? That person seems so different. But when the differences are set aside and when they can coexist, that's when the creativity and problem solving comes in. And I'm so glad that it worked out for you. This is absolutely inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing that, Melissa. Melissa, my next question for you would be so what does a chief experience officer do exactly? What does your day-to-day look like? I'm sure it's filled with meetings, but I would love for you to take us through your day-to-day like life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, traditionally, I think a chief experience officer, like I always joke, it's like whatever the CFO, the CEO, and the COO isn't doing. I think sometimes that's true in a lot of organizations. I sort of have a dual role. Like, I do this for diversify thinking. I also do it for a tech startup that's based in Belgium, and I was their first U.S. employee. And in both cases, it's quite different. I think in one case, in terms of diversified thinking, it's really understanding who are all our stakeholders out there and what is their experience working with us, and really mapping that out. So think of like customer journey mapping, and sort of like waking up in the morning and thinking about, okay, who are my stakeholders today and how am I going to prioritize them, because we all have different ones and sometimes that shifts depending on the day. And then how am I going to build support for them? And I think this is the part where it's really interesting, because it's a nice intersection with inclusivity. Because I think the to me, the definition of inclusion isn't about making sure you're including everyone. It's making sure you're supporting them and meeting them where they are. And I think that's like the beauty of what a chief experience officer is really about. So depending on where you are in your role as a chief experience officer, with me, like with my tech startup, it's part employee experience. Like, what are we doing to support our team? How are we expanding and growing our team? It's part product experience. Like, our stakeholders that are out there using our product as a tech startup, what's their experience like, from the moment that they learn about us all the way through maybe even the sales experience, the actual user experience in our product, and then even the experience like when they have issues, right, when they're reaching out to support, and like what does that look like, and really mapping all that out and understanding and embracing it to find opportunities to just like make it a great one. Because
Well,
we only have so much time on this earth, right? Not to get like really like existential, but we only have so much time. So like, if you want someone to have a great experience, then you have to be intentional about it. And I think again, like, my passion around all things diverse and inclusive really segment nicely into the chief experience officer role, because it really is about like, who are we talking about right now, what are they trying to achieve, and where are they in their journey, and how can I meet them there.
That is amazing. You know how they say you should wear multiple hats. Clearly, you're wearing so many different hats and you're trying to create a workspace that people can come in and enjoy. Which leads me to my follow up question. You said that mostly some of your role entails creating a culture where people can come in and learn. So, the people experiences. Can you tell me more about that? How do you create that culture where people can have a wonderful time at work, specifically for your tech startup that you're currently working at?
Yeah. Well, it's not easy. I'll tell you that. I'd love to tell you like it's A plus B equals C. And again, and it's not. And the reason why, right, is because you're talking about people and it's the most, we are probably the most unpredictable and unique characters and, beings on the planet, right? And I think so what's interesting about that is, we've started to adopt it starts with recruiting, right? Like how are you attracting people like in that case? How are you, what's their experience throughout the recruiting process and then onboarding? And then how are you keeping them? And I think for us, we spent a lot of time thinking about recruiting last year on the tech startup side, which was a good time to think about it as we were about to, grow considerably. When I started there, we were about 17 employees globally, and now we're well over
No.
50. So, and that's only in the last year and a half. So that's a lot of growth in a short period of time, which means again back to that word intentionality. Like you really need to be intentional about how you're hiring and what the practices are there. What's that experience, there's that word again, going to be like for the people that you're talking to throughout the process. And I think for us it was thinking about too, what is it that we want someone to feel like? How do we want them to feel so they accept a role, they're working with us? What's the first experience we want them to have? And so what we did was we created this. It's so simple, right? It's just a Google form. It's really not like rocket science. But we asked some questions that I think aren't traditionally asked when you join a company, and it's anything from like, how do you like to receive praise? Because we all assume that everyone loves to be celebrated publicly and like, or have gifts showered upon them, and in some cases that's not true, right? So I think that's again like putting the lens of diversity on it. It's looking at like, okay, there's a dimension of diversity where some people do not appreciate that sort of public accreditation of anything, right? And then you're making them uncomfortable, which makes them feel like they don't fit, like they're like, I don't belong here because like I just don't, that doesn't feel organic to me. So something as simple as that, all the way to like, what's the best time for you, like working hours? Like, in other words, when do you feel the most productive in a day? And why is that important? Well, if I have a team of 7 people, 10 people, whatever it is, and I keep having a meeting with Joe, and for whatever reason, our 10 a.m. meetings, I just feel like, wow, Joe just hates me. Like he cannot stand me. Like, and I'm like, wow, this is unfortunate. Like, I don't know what's going on with my relationship with Joe. But honestly, it's that 10 a.m. is the worst possible time for him. Right. And I should just not be scheduling meetings with him at 10 a.m. because that's not when he wants to be social. That's not how he works best. But how would I know that? And I don't think we think to ask. So I always say, like, sometimes the whole art of inclusion is just asking questions, like, and being really, really curious. And so we just started to implement that. And I'll tell you, again, more like testing it, right? I would say on the leadership side, there was some like, but we want to ask them that, like, and I was like, just trust me because what we'll learn from it will be how can we support them and again meet them where they are. And we've had some new employees who actually shared with me. We also have a practice where when someone joins they meet all the executives within like the first week or so of employment, just like a quick like 15-20 minute, hi, this is who I am, this is what I do here, if you need, sort of that sort of entry level introduction. But one of them employees I didn't hire directly said to me, "Hey, I knew I made the right choice when I got this like survey that I had to fill out, and it was asking me questions about like everything from like what my favorite snack was to the best time of day for me in terms of productivity and like how I like to receive praise and how I prefer to receive feedback, both constructive, etc." And she's like, I knew I joined the right company. I made the right choice. And I was like, that is gold to me, right? Because that's like the first experience that someone has when they join your company. And how do they feel? Right? Because people don't remember what you say, they don't remember what you do, but they do remember how you make them feel. So I think for starting, like that's again a great and simple way to just like really be curious about what people's needs are and then have it documented. I mean, for me, I'm like, as a manager, can we like, wait, we already hired some people and they didn't do this. Can we go back and have them do this? Right. Um, and just really spending some time thinking about who each individual is, what they need, and how you can support to get the best quality. I mean, honestly, it's just good business. Like you're going to get much better productivity from them, right? If you understand what makes them tick.
People underestimate the power of listening, and I love the fact that you did not take a one size fits all for everyone. You really took a personal approach to each individual that joined your team, made them feel like they were part of a family, where each of them were recognized for what they wanted, whether it was their favorite snack, whether it was the best time of the day. And I'm sure the employees that work with you currently absolutely love that, because it is really something that's very special. So I'm glad that people like you exist who really treat employees as assets rather than liabilities. So thank you for sharing that, Melissa. Last question, Melissa. You mentioned that your team grew exponentially. I would love to hear if you are hiring for certain roles. So if people are
Yeah,
looking for jobs, they
absolutely.
know what to
We
seek
have
for.
jobs right now. We hire globally, right? So the company is primarily we have some roles in the U.S., but right now I believe we're hiring in all sorts of parts of the world. And we have roles open in the Middle East, I think, for support. We have roles open in like project management in Europe. I think we have maybe a sales development or BDR role open actually in the US. So there's quite a few roles open, but if you go to think.cloud, you can see all the careers that are listed there. But yeah, quite a few opportunities.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that, Melissa. But other than that, Melissa, our time is up. I'm so grateful to see leaders like you who exist, who really do care about their employees and just making sure that their needs are catered to. Because you don't want to go to work when you feel like it's a burden. You really want to go to work when you feel like you're contributing towards something and you have people that you could rely on. And with leaders like you, I think it gets easier for those individuals to come to work and just be excited about
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you for
for
your
coming
time.
on the show.